All right. Well, first of all, like, thank you so much for taking the time. This is really exciting. I haven't heard that much yet about like the results of where this grant went, and I'm really excited to, and I'm really, really excited to share with our community. But yeah, let's start with a little about you and a little about Seva.
Sure. So my name is Kulvir Singh Gill, and I am one of the co-founders of Seva Food Bank, and right now serving as the chair of the board of directors. Seva's been around now for, this will be our 12th year. And we have 2 locations that we operate out of in Mississauga, 2 warehouses. One is close to the airport at Malton, and the second one is close to Square One in the Cooksville area on Wolfdale Road. And from those 2 locations, we're taking care of about 900 families every month.
It's really, really impressive and really, really incredible. And I know you're doing also, you've mentioned some like collaborative projects with some other communities. Like, it seems like you're really, really well networked in the area, and really reaching the people who need support the most. So congratulations for that.
Yeah, it's been just really cool. When we started this, we have started by folks in the Sikh community, second generation Canadians who were like, okay, what are we going to do? We've built our gurdwaras, we've built our community centers. We need to keep, of course, investing in our own community, but how are we putting our values into action? And how are we taking care of our neighbors? And our neighbors are of every background and ethnicity and everything. And what are we doing to take our institutions, things like Langar, our community kitchens, the sense of seva that we have for us, which is a really spiritual concept, how are we putting that into practice? And it's just been a fun way of getting it out there, putting us out into the community. And more importantly, it's been a rallying cry of unity in our community. Like, no surprise, our community has divisions, has people that don't always agree on the same thing on everything. But one thing we can agree to is that there probably shouldn't be more hungry people in our neighborhoods, right? Right? Can we all agree that this?
I should hope everybody can agree.
Yeah. So we're real. I know it's baseline here, right? It's 2022.
Yeah.
It's real baseline. Can we all agree that children should not be going to school hungry? Right? That regardless of whatever decisions or choices they've made in life or whatever privileges they have or don't have, at the end of the day, in a country like Canada, it is almost criminal to say that there's kids that don't have enough to eat. And we need to do something about it. And what that's done is it's by just trying to focus on that shared purpose. Can we just get on that? I don't care what you believe in. I don't care where you're from, what you do. Like, can we all just fight hunger? It's become a huge rallying cry, and it's been amazing that we've been able to kind of make the impact we've been able to make, and bring together people as diverse as we've been able to bring to the table.
Yeah. No, I relate to that so strongly. I think, similarly, the Jewish community, or anyone who's watching this video will know Reform, Orthodox, like all these different sort of like movements, and there's plenty of divisions, and there's 2 Jews, 3 opinions is the joke. But one thing, same thing, everyone can agree children should not be going to school hungry. And one of the things that was really notable about Mazon, like in the 90s and the early 2000s, was we had rabbis from all 4 major denominations of Judaism, who historically there's plenty of difference of opinion on our board, which was really, really exciting.
Well, and I think
exactly like you said, it's a uniting cause. No one thinks more children should go to school hungry. No one.
Yeah, and I think for us, what it's also done is it's allowed to have this kind of exchange, this kind of outreach.
Yeah.
If we can get all the Jewish denominations and all the different Sikh schools of thoughts individually saying that hunger's a bad thing, and we can start working together.
Yeah.
I think this is, we got to look for places of optimism in Canada as we get more and more polarized. All these things are happening, and I'd have to say, amongst all the things that aren't going well in Canada, multi-faith coordination, interfaith stuff continues to be the source of kind of warm fuzzies for me, right? This is not a place of religious strife. Of all the problems we have, the fact that my neighbors are Muslim and Hindu and Jewish and Christian, Buddhist and non-believers, and we're fine, and our kids play together, is actually incredible. And the fact that now we have organizations that are working together like ours is just even more mind-blowing, and it reinforces what Canada could be when we get our act together. I was going to share it later, and I just have to share it now because it's our best story. And Izzy, this is why we connected, and it brings a smile to my is that we were just getting going as an organization, not knowing what the heck a food bank was. Like, we were so over our heads when we started this thing, right? But we knew that we needed to do something, and we needed to kind of mobilize our Sikh Canadian community to do it. And we pulled together our resources, got up and running, and and very quickly realized, boy, we are going to need a lot of money and a lot of resources to make this happen. We can't just keep self-funding it. So what are the other grants or opportunity out there? And we were so small, so new, that there weren't a lot of sources of funding for brand new organizations and institutions, right? Because you have to have a track record, you have to have charitable status, all these things. And lo and behold, we come across Mazon. And I think for us, it's just a special place in my heart with Mazon, and you know, my friends who are from the Jewish community and just general, just saying, like, you know, when we were a nobody, Mazon was smart enough to have a fund for folks like us who are trying to do things that aren't established, that are just getting off the ground. So the very first institutional funding that we got for Seva Food Bank, for a Sikh Canadian organization, came from Mazon. And to this day, I have so much gratitude for the community. And I said, that's the intention, because it is easy to fund it. You know, an organization, that $100 million organization, it's easy to give them another few $1 million because you know they're doing right with it, right? But a very small brand new organization that's still up and running, even giving them that first $100, that first $1,000 it's a leap of faith.
Yeah.
But I think that's where faith comes in, is saying, you know what, let's give it to them. What's the worst they're going to do with it?
It's so true. I think there is like a mentality among like foundations, among funders, to like make the safest choices. Yeah. But sometimes that means you're choosing between the highest impact and the safest choice. Sometimes the thing that is actually going to make the biggest difference, like it did with this, like, look where you guys have gone. Like, obviously not just because of that small grant that we gave you originally, obviously because of your own and like incredible hard work and all the incredible volunteers that you have running this entire operation over a period of, what did you say, 15 years?
12 years now, yeah.
Like it starts with funding organizations being able to like put in the work, develop the relationships, have the trust, you know, sit with their emotions. It can be emotional, and making the decisions that are really going to impact communities the most. So I'm glad you recognize it, but it's like, well, there's such evidence of why. And I'll say, we have so many things we could talk about, but you know, during the pandemic, that first wave of the pandemic, there was this flourishing of emergent organizations. Established organizations collapsed. They were just too structured to adapt.
You couldn't pivot
timelines. And people just started new projects out of their garages, out of their backyards, out of their closed down office buildings. And a lot of those things did, you know, it was just emergent infrastructure. And Mazon got to do similar things of saying, we know that you guys are stepping up where the big institutions are letting cracks form, you know. So
what was happening, I think the big institutions were trying to pivot as the best they could, and they still, at the end of the day, they still had scale, right? And many of them, you know, made the big differences, made the impact in the community. I think what ended up happening is that because the need was so emergent and so apparent and so fast moving, that small organizations were able to be agile and pivot to that. But also credit not just to all the new not-for-profits that started up. I have to go, a huge amount of credit goes to the funding community and the foundations and all of them, because you know, the taps opened up, right? Like we were, you know, when that March 2020 happened and all of a sudden the world shuts down and our, you know, we can't find volunteers. We don't know where food's going to come from. We have no idea how many clients, you know, we had folks who were donating to the food bank were starting to line up for food because their businesses had collapsed. Like the world was kind of ending right for us. And in those moments, our truest funders, our most trusted funders created emergency funds overnight. And it was a joke. It was like Monday, the grant gets announced. Friday, you apply. It was like Monday, you're approved. And the next Friday, the funds were in your bank. Like it was unbelievable. And that happened to us. Like we had ones that were grants were like came through. And what was the recognition was there's a time for due diligence, obviously. There's a time for reporting. There's a time for the audits and everything to come in. But this was a time where, you know, those trusted relationships were leveraged. And for us, having the years of investment in those relationships with our funders and being able to deliver, that when the time came saying, trust us, and it wasn't even like trust us, it was like, we trust you. Take this money, go do what you need to do with it and just spend it and get it in the hands of people that, you know, do the thing that you guys do the best. And we survived. And in fact, you know, I look back and I kind of was like, you know, tale of two cities, the best of times, the worst of times. Demand was through the roof. It was nutty. Everyone was getting sick and all those things. But like we had lineups of people dropping off food. The funding we received over that 6-month period, like has been a step change in our organization and our capacity, what we're doing. And it's allowed us to kind of dream, you know, dream dreams around what we could be and how could we be so much more than just a food bank, right? And no food bank just wants to be that. But what do we do to address the root causes of hunger in the community? What do we want to do that? But I do want to make back that first grant from Mazon, and not to toot your horn too much, but what it did though, it was not just the money, it was actually validation.
Yeah.
Because what it does, it was for us, just like, you know what, we're good enough that somebody's actually willing, someone other than people related to me are willing to give us money to go do something good in the community. And that actually then becomes a calling card for when we go to institutional funding like Trillium, like the Region Appeal funds, the things that we go to. And now we are able to get, we still get money from Mazon, but now we've been able to apply for much more bigger grants and get more impactful grants. But that's because of the stepping stones, right? And you guys were a great stepping stone to that for us.
You ever need a letter of support for a government grant or Trillium grant, anything?
Sure.
Call us. However, there is another grant that I want to talk to you about today, which is you were we had a very small pool of gear grant recipients, a very selective pool in 2021, and you guys were one of them. And yes. I would love to hear in your own words where that money went and how it affected your community.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if I can say the word in this is a religious podcast or video, but the sexiest thing in the food bank world. You wonder where I was going. The sexiest thing in the food bank world are fridges and freezers, like the industrial scale ones. Yep. And because for us, that's what we live and die on, is our capacity. Because if we don't have that space, then we can't take, we say we want to give people healthy, nutritious, safe food to take. And then if we don't have anywhere to store all that safe stuff, then what are we giving up? We're giving up cans, we're giving up packaged foods. And so while we tried to bring in as much produce and as much frozen, as much dairy as well, we got to put it somewhere. And so the infrastructure, the Gear Grant helped us fund was build our capacity for our big fridge freezer units. The one we have at our Malton unit has been there since we opened up around 2014, 15-ish when we installed it, outgrown it. And what we basically did was with the money we got, with some other the funding, we were able, again, it was a catalyst. That money was able to allow us to go and multiplier and get other funding in there. And now we probably, I think, tripled our capacity at the back of the food bank for the food that we want to give out.
Yeah.
Fruits, veggies, right? Frozen meals, meat products, they're dairy products, they're the healthy stuff. So it isn't, so our capacity for KD didn't triple. Our capacity for this stuff ended up tripling, right? With people.
Yeah. I mean, the reason that we started the gear grants a couple of years ago is because we knew we were working with organizations. Mazon used to have a restriction of we only fund food because I guess there was a sense that that's what donors wanted to hear. You want to be able to make a donation and know that it turned into a meal. And it makes sense from that perspective. But the moment you start having conversations like this, having more like relational connections with different partners, and trust, then it becomes very clear that, there's food rescue organizations on the rise in Canada right now. Thank goodness, because we need it so badly. Food waste is a terrible problem here. And making sure that all of that wasted food, everyone loves the idea that it could go to a food bank, but where's the food bank going to put it unless they have the capacity to hold it, right? And so when we started asking what infrastructure would make a really big difference for all our partner programs across Canada, the answers that we got back were fridges and freezers, some of the highest priorities, like everywhere. So when you guys are getting all this donated food, is it coming from the community? Do you have relationships with food rescue organizations? Where does it come from?
Yeah, so for us, we've had to really build a portfolio, like a diversified strategy of our food sourcing, right? So we're really lucky to be part of the Mississauga Food Bank's network of food banks, and so in Mississauga, we really do have a well-coordinated system that the Mississauga Food Bank is kind of like our wholesaler distributor. They're the ones that work with the larger, massive, the Walmarts, the Costco's, the Loblaws of the world to get big shipments of food, and then they break them down and they do that. They also do great citywide food drives for the different food banks and stuff. So we probably get, anywhere from probably sometimes 2/3 of our food, 3/4 of our food from there at different points in time. We also do our own food drives in the community for our high holidays, for Vaisakhi or Guru Nanak's group, where we do those. But then we also have been relationships with the local South Asian grocery stores, who at the end of the day, they have, these are all the veggies that are ripe, that nobody goes and buys produce that's going to go bad in the next 2 days, right? You want everything to stay. But what we can do is we get it, and we get it out the next day, and we say to families, like, go home and make this tonight. And we give it to them. And so we're constantly getting those. And then we have, because we have people on our team that are a lot more savvier with social media than I am, we have a great social media presence. And so we have calls to action that go out all the time to say, we're low on this, and oh my God, it's like a bat signal. You put instead of a bat, you put up a picture of a squash or an apple or whatever's up in the sky, and boom, like overnight, rice, flour, produce, whatever we end up getting there. The other thing that the fridge freezer allows us to do is cut back on waste, right? So things stay longer. Summer, at the back, the big part of the warehouse, you can't air condition the whole thing. It just, we blow our brains on the cost of it. So things have to sit there. And so we've had in the past where like, it just breaks our heart when we get things that are good, nourishing food, and we can't get them out fast enough because our shifts and what things are. And so now with the fridge freezer capacity, it's like, boom, throw it in there, let it ride. If we need, everything just lasts longer and we can get it out there. So it's actually allows us to get, there's a direct correlation between fridge freezer capacity and the amount of food that a family takes home when they come to the food bank. And that for us has been the big difference. And
like you said, it's not about tripling your capacity for KD, but the food that you're tripling capacity for, like fresh vegetables, for like dairy, proteins, meats, like the things that a family really needs to stay healthy. The things we want to give them, right? So safe, healthy, nutritious, culturally appropriate food is where we're focused. So I wonder, it sounds like, this is in practice, like this higher nutritional quality food, this more culturally appropriate food is already hitting the communities that you serve. Have you gotten any feedback? Have you heard, are people noticing the difference in the quality of food? Absolutely. I think one of the things we've made a huge, this has been a priority for us from day one, and which is why the focus on getting the physical space to do this and infrastructure to do it. Like, when the new Canadian Food Guide came out, we were one of the first adopters. We took it like from beta edition. We said, and we actually pre-COVID model, and we're moving back to it now. We designed our grocery store model to walk through like the Canadian Food Guide. So it wasn't like the meat section and the bean section. We made the protein section. Yeah. Right. And we made the junk food section, right? We didn't call it snacks. We called it junk food. And we said, go get all the healthy stuff. And at the end, you can take a few treats on the way home as well, but let's get you the healthy things. And we made, this focus on, I used to say this to people. I said, don't give us the food that you don't want to eat. Give us the food that you want to eat, right? So don't give me the cans and stuff from the back of the pantry. They're about to expire. You're like, oh, I'll give them these, canned turnips or something that we're not going to eat. We'll give them away to somebody else, right? Like, give food that you would want to eat. And then I looked at my diet. I'm like, no, give food that you should be eating. Let's make sure that healthy food is the least of the worries of the people coming to us. Because the folks coming to us, I have no lived experience, and I'm so much privilege. I have no lived experience of living a life where I have to make a choice between grocery or gas bill or children's winter jackets or coats like that. But like literally millions of Canadians have to go through that. And if you're making those choices and you're working frontline jobs and you're on the buses and you're commuting to work, you're doing all these things, not just sitting on nice Zoom calls. And on top of that, you're not getting enough to eat. You're not getting good things to eat. Like, you don't have the fuel in your body for that. So our premise has always been, can we make the food bank a place where folks are going to get such good food, such good care, that food is the least of their worries going forward. And so they can go and challenge tackle the real challenges they have going on in their life. And that's another place we spend a lot of time, is like, how do we help people address the causes and the consequences of food insecurity? Because otherwise, at that point, we are the Band-Aid. Right? Food banks are always called, you guys are just a Band-Aid on the system. You're not actually addressing it. And we say, absolutely. If I just give somebody food today, well, that's only going to last a week or two. So how do we make sure we get them back on their feet so they don't need to come to us? Well, I can only talk about their problems of tomorrow if I solve their hunger of today. Yeah. Right? It's no good lecturing them down and starting to build capabilities and capacity and family. That's like, well, they haven't had a proper meal in days. Like, feed them, get their food situation taken, get their food, their shelter, the security situation taken care of. And now they can actually start thinking about tomorrow. Because if you don't take care of that, they can't get past today. And so for the food bank, for us, is like, take care of their today so they can actually start thinking about their tomorrow. Right? Yeah. It's so amazing. I feel like there's a shift happening, I think, since like in Mazon's history. When Mazon was founded in 1986, it was really like the food aid world was, food banks were the new thing. The idea of a municipal level, like all these different food pantries doing things separately, collaborating on a municipal level, that was the new like hot technology in 1986. Sure. And at this point, like, I mean, we've already talked about a couple innovations, revolutions happening in the food security world. One of which is rescued food. And another one is exactly what you're saying, is organizations starting to address like these deeper root causes, and organizations saying, you know what, actually, if we're going to be a certain level of institution, we also need a social worker on staff who's going to be sitting down with people and making sure they can do their paperwork, get on EI, who's going to be helping them connect with housing services, who's going to be getting them legal support, things like that. There's organizations that are, God, you know, Mazon just started collecting this data. I wish that I knew it off the top of my head, but I think it was something like 60% or more. It might be more, 70, 80% of our partners like do go beyond food.
We have a client navigator program.
The Canadian scene is like rising up, like we're doing better.
Well, we have exactly that program. It's our client navigator program, which we say is our job is to help understand if we have built a trusted relationship with our clients, which is what we aim to do, that we can actually start unpacking what is going on in their life that has brought them to the food bank. Yeah. You know, they all come because they don't have enough to eat, but the question of why don't they have enough to eat has multiple answers. Mm-hmm. And it could be, you know, employment related, it could be legal, it could be domestic violence, it could be addictions or mental health, or, you know, there's so many things that are going on in people's lives that they open the fridge and there's nothing to eat there. So our job is to say, let's take care of your food now. And then as we get to know you, you let us into your world and we can start understanding what else is going on so that we can direct you towards the awesome agencies that do that amazingly. Our job is not to replicate the existing services in the social services network.
Exactly.
Our job is to help them navigate it. And what we say to folks is we're going to open the door, but you got to walk through it. Yeah. We're not going to do this for you because our job is to build, our job is to build self-reliance in you, to get you away from being dependent on us and other people doing it for you. So we're going to help you through that journey. And it's become incredible what the things we're able to do for our clients that come in because we're able to trust them. They're able to trust us. And you know, we have really taken that to heart to the point where, like, if it's like helping furnish people's homes, helping them with legal issues, helping them, you know, get out of the violent situations, helping with mental health, like it's amazing our frontline staff do that. You know, but it just begs the question of there's that great saying, like if I give a hungry person food, they call me a saint. If I start asking why they're hungry, they call me a troublemaker.
Exactly. The next thing that I wanted to say was, and isn't it a shame that as a society, we are in a place where any of these problems, any of these regular things that happen to people, like the split up of a couple or grief, you know, losing a loved one who's supporting you, any of these things could be a reason why all of a sudden, not only are you emotionally falling apart, but now you don't have food on the table for yourself or for your children. What
three
kind
strikes.
of a society?
Any one of us has 3 strikes against them.
Yeah.
You just mentioned those, you know, a couple of those things, a death of a family member, a major illness, loss of employment or income, something like that. Yeah. Most of us have the capacity to be, to absorb one of those blows. Mm-hmm. 2, 3 things start happening in your life, 3 calamities happen in your life. And I don't care who you are. I don't care. You could be the richest person in Canada right now. You could have all the privilege in the world, but you know, we only have so much resilience, and those days come. And so this sense of criminalizing poverty or blaming the impoverished, blaming the hungry for their lot in life is something we've had to spend a lot of time overcoming in our own community. Because when we started off in our own community, people are like, because we're a community of immigrants that have like bootstraps themselves, come to this country, work really hard and make it happen. You know, my own parents were like that and things like that. And so people ask me like, well, why do they need help? Can't they work and can't they do this, this, and this? And then you look and say, well, maybe they don't have the extended family structure that Punjabis do, right? Maybe they don't have those jobs. They don't know. You have all those things that you took for granted. And it isn't that, you know, you didn't work hard. Of course you worked incredibly hard, but you were lifted up in certain ways that you didn't even notice, like a fish in the water doesn't notice the tide. But there's so many people out there that don't have that tide. They have nothing going for them. If I'm a, you know, you know, to pick any refugee that's coming in now, if I'm the Ukrainian now, or the Syrian or the Afghani refugee coming in, and you've gone through huge trauma and everything, and you come to this country, you don't know the language, you don't know anybody, stuff like that. And I just say, you know what, pull your stuff up from the bootstraps. Like, that's so unfair.
What bootstraps? I don't even have boots.
Boots. Can
someone give me the boots first? This is, I feel really, really similarly. And the thing that I always say also, like in terms of what you're saying with that judgment of why can't they just, what I would say is, whatever it is you're about to say, whatever the thing that you think they should just, has it occurred to you that maybe it's occurred to them too? And maybe they've tried it. They're the one who lives their life full-time 24/7. Whatever it is that you're thinking that they should try, chances are they've tried it and it didn't work for whatever reason, or they can't try it for whatever reason. But the number one thing is to always trust that people are doing their best, and whatever challenges they're facing, clearly there are bigger challenges than what you're facing if you're in a different position. Like they're
Totally.
just trust that they know what they're doing and that they're doing their very best, and treat them accordingly, support them accordingly. When they articulate what their need is, give it to them. And that's the best way to help, you know.
Well, and
like,
this is why you've
they
seen
can tell
some
you
of the
what their
things happening.
priorities are.
Yeah, and so some of the things that's happening now is in the food bank world, you're starting to see distribution of gift cards starting to happen, right? So we've had a donor. We had a donor come to us with a major gift. It was I think 6-figure, right? And they said, I want this distributed directly to folks. And what do we do? And we worked with them, and we realized that this person was really passionate, and ended up at the end of the day, we gave, it was probably almost it was at least $100 a family gift card that we were giving out to folks. Of course, people were like, whoa, what do you know? They're going to spend it on this, this, and this. And I said, I just have to say, I get really angry about this, this kind of correlation that people assume between poverty and dishonesty, that people somehow assume that because you don't have money, that you're willing to be unscrupulous, you're willing to do whatever it takes, or that, you're going to just, spend the money on frivolous things and things like that there. And it just strikes me as so judgmental and so, assumptive. And at the end of the day, I look at, I made this joke once, and I was pretty off cover, that I'd rather lose my wallet at the food bank than I would on Bay Street. Right? In the sense, right?
Someone will get it back.
And it's happened where I give you the story. I remember this family, these seniors would come in, and this family, when we first started the food bank, we give everybody bags of milk, right? And this senior couple would never take milk. And I'd be like, why aren't you taking milk? What do you eat? They're like, no, it's for the children. I'm like, no, we have enough milk. The children, families are getting it, but take it, you need it and stuff. And they're like, no, we cannot take it. And they would take it, and they would go give it to a family with kids, and they wouldn't take it. Or we had families that would take whatever their food was, and they'd come back the next month with the food they didn't use, the cans that they didn't use, and they brought them back. And you're just like, you have these moments where you're like, you are the most honest people, the most hardworking people. And you look at the life, I remember food banks here, we kind of get, we're trying to get people on appointments and managing shifts and stuff. And sometimes our volunteers do kind of a little bit of, they haven't seen full experience yet. The eyes open. We have clients who show up a couple minutes right after we close, and we're like, well, sorry, you can't come again and stuff like that. And I've had clients, young teenagers that are just, no, rules are rules. You can't come after time. And I've had our staff or older volunteers go up and see them and say, what's going on? And you realize this poor person, got off work, had to take 2 buses and ran here just to get close, just to get food to go home. And you're going to tell them that he was going to have food, so there was nothing going to be for their family to eat that day. And the next, and you're like, oh my God, like, yes, I'll stick around an extra 5 minutes and give you your food and do that happen there. But there's this empathizing that somehow, these screens are making really hard. And what COVID has done for us is actually put everybody on a screen, even at the food bank. We talked about getting to know our clients and knowing what's going on in their life. During COVID, we were scared of our clients. They were scared of us, right? Like we were throwing food at them as they kind of drove by, walked by, don't come inside. We can't go outside. And at the beginning, it was all about safety and everything now. And now what we're actually in the middle of doing is pivoting as we come out of COVID is like, how do we put the intimacy? How do we put the people, the relationships back in? Because we want to know our clients so we can help them. And for many, many of our clients, the only real social interaction they actually have is coming to the food banks, coming out to the agencies there because they're seniors at home or they're estranged from their loved ones and stuff. So coming to the food bank and talking to us and that's their outing. That's the place to go. And poverty is so isolating on top of that, right? Because they don't have money to go out and do things and things like that. So we found that there's been such a social atrophy in our communities with volunteers, with staff, with our clients. And so it's a big part of what we're also trying to address there in the food bank. So, again, much more than a food bank.
I also just wanted to add this for anyone watching at home, just to know as a fact, what you were saying about gift cards. I think this sense that, if you give a low-income person, a low-income family a gift card, how do you know what they're going to spend it on? What if they just spend it on chips? Something like there's this sense that probably the same people who would make poor choices enough to end up in that low-income situation or that would also make poor food choices. It just isn't true. It's just plainly false. And another partner program that we work with closely is I Can for Kids. That's based out of Calgary, and they do They used to do food hampers, like lunch, like packs, I guess, for kids in summer who usually rely on school food, like school lunches, school breakfasts.
Yep.
What happens to them when school is out of session? So they were doing that. And then during the pandemic, things pivoted, and all of a sudden, those kids weren't getting food by school food programs, not for a 2 or 3 month stretch, but for the entire year. They had to scale up very quickly. And the fastest way to do it was gift cards. And they partnered with a university to actually research what happens when you stop choosing food that you're giving these families, and instead you give them a gift card. And the answer is, even when the food was chosen for them and distributed, when they got gift cards, the quality of their nutrition went up. And that's just a fact. That is just, and that's a fact that is emerging. Like, that's something we've seen, like, even in these through the pandemic years, and like through our network of partners. It's just incredible. Anyway, I had some other questions. We've only got a couple minutes left, and I had some other sweet questions for you, I hope.
Sure.
Another thing that is true about your organization that you share with Mazon is that you're an organization that's based from this, like, the principles from a community of a minority faith group. Yep. But like Mazon, you help anyone and everyone in need. I wanted to know if there's any teachings from your faith about charities, about supporting low-income people or food insecure people, about supporting, like you were saying, about your own community versus others or outsiders. I'm just curious, like, how those things are discussed in the community.
You're gonna get me into sermon mode here, but no, I guess
I give you a sermon back. Tell me.
I think this is probably part of where the kinship between the Sikh and the Jewish community continues every time. It always amazes me the overlap that's there. But the simple answer is throughout our entire history, we have thrived as a community when we have put others first, and when we become self-isolating and worried about ourselves, it's actually usually to our detriment. And that's maybe a personal view, but I see that's absolutely the case here. So simple for us, our concept of the divine is that our concept of God, or the force, or whatever you want to call it, resides. The creator resides within the creation, and so we all have that spark, that divine spark within each one of us. So a moment of quiet reflection on the divine within, a quiet meditation and prayer, and a moment of service of the creation, be it humanity or the planet, others, is actually seen as two sides of the same coin. So Seva and Simran are two sides of the same coin. Seva means selfless service of others. Simran is remembrance and contemplation of the divine. So for us, those two things are actually one and the same. So serving others is actually a form of prayer. Giving to others in need, because what you're doing is you're recognizing the divinity within them, and you're recognizing that we're all part of one. We're all part of one larger being, force, whatever, universe, whatever you want to call it, that we're all one. And so if nobody really gives me an award when I feed my children, they're like, well, that's kind of your job to feed your kids, right? But when I go feed other people's kids, or I shouldn't feed other people's kids in that way, but if I go and serve others in need, people, I expect an award. Well, what? Because that's such a strange thing to serve strangers and people you don't know. But if I have the sense that we're all part of one collective, we're all part of one humanity, whatever that is, then it's like taking money out of my left pocket and put it in my right pocket. It's all coming out of the same place. So for us, this sense of giving
your
back,
children or others' children,
and for us, the other thing is that maybe this is the Punjabi part of us, Sikhs part of us, is that, boy, we love to, everything revolves around food. Yes. And in our tradition, religious traditions, that all of our gurdwaras have the prayer rooms where our scriptures are held and where all the prayers take, but they also have a community kitchen associated with it. And the community kitchen demonstrates.
I admire most about the Sikh community. I think that is such a phenomenal tradition.
And so for us, it's the simple thing is it's hard to pray on an empty stomach. So let's eat together before we can pray. But other things, it builds capacity in the community. It's capability building around self-reliance and food systems and all the things that go with it. The other simple thing is that when you go to a Sikh gurdwara or house of worship, you sit on the floor if you can, and you share a meal together, which proves the equality and humility of all of humanity. So men and women sit side by side, kings and paupers, slaves, politicians, prime minister comes, billionaire comes, they sit with their driver or their servant or their PA, right? And they sit and share a meal together. So the sense of equality that comes with it as well. And then also the langar then is also a sense of activism. And because it goes back into, well, how do we serve the community? If all the people of value just stayed at home and prayed, then what use are we to the rest of the world? So
Yeah.
putting values into action is super important. And at the end of the day,
So
you know,
amazing.
Izzy, with all respect, you know, I don't care as much as what the Jewish community believes, as much as I care about what the Jewish community does to demonstrate those beliefs. And, you know, Mazon is an amazing example of putting your values into action. And that's what we try to do with Seva as well, is how do we put those, that's why we called it the Seva Food Bank. It's a
Yeah,
place of service. It's a platform for people to give back and serve others in the way that they think is best.
that is so, you know, I'll ask you one more thing. This is something that I
Yeah.
had heard. Maybe I was wrong, but I also heard that that's the purpose of the turbans, is because there's such an emphasis on like selfless service. The turbans are there to mark people
Branding, baby.
as available as helpers. Is that true?
It's branding. It's we are meant to literally stick out like sore thumbs in a world that that I, you know, and I hope that every Sikh who wears a turban lives up to this, is that in a moment of need, that if you come across a Sikh male or female wearing a turban, that they are willing to drop everything and give that to you. And that's actually those that become formally initiated into the faith. That's the vow you take, is that you, at this point, your life is not for yourself. It's in service of others.
Wow, that is very powerful.
It's quite the bar, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's hard,
You know,
harder than others to meet.
gosh, I think the things you were saying about, God, where was this in this conversation? We've covered so much, it's been a whirlwind. There was something you were saying about the moments when your community is like turned inwards and isolated, you know, usually end up being to your detriment. And I was thinking, I think about often is like in Jewish history, when you look at moments when we've been more isolated and moments when we've done, you know, the Mazon thing, the thing where we reach outwards and participating, you know, multiculturally and multi-faith. I think as like a community that's been diasporic, that's been, you know, a minority, a threatened minority for so much of our history in so many places, I think there's this sense of when diaspora first started, when we lost political agency, we're scattered to the winds, there's this moment of, okay, we got to stick out for ourselves, you know, first. And then over time, as Jewish communities like settle and develop more complex relationships with the people around them, there's an expanding of those boundaries of, okay, like you said, you built your gurdwaras, okay, the shul is built. And now we need to be caring for the poor, the sick of any of our neighbors, just good citizens of civil society. And then I think even, you know, unfortunately at the start of the 20th century, there was this other major genocide. There was an absolute scrambling, another scattering to the wind of all these Jewish communities. Pretty much the entire Jewish community in the entire world had to migrate somewhere or another within like a 40-year period or something. And I think there was a momentary like contracting again in a lot of those places of, we got to look out for ourselves first. And I see Mazon as part of this wave of the Jewish community expanding outwards, of saying, okay, we took care of our basic needs first. And while there's still poverty in the Jewish community, just like there is in every community, we are at the point where we can say we can care for our own and we can turn out to others, and we can do the same thing that you guys are doing. We can collaborate with you and help you help your communities, help you help any communities. Exactly.
I have so much respect for the Jewish community, in the sense that, you know, because you have fought many of the battles that the Sikh community has been the recipients of. I remember when there was the whole controversy now of Sikh turbans in the RCMP and the officers there. I remember going to, I was a kid that grew up in Calgary, and I actually went to some of the proceedings that were in the courthouse there. I was a high school maybe kid. I'd go in there, and it was Jewish groups that were actually petitioning and were going on as on record and advocating for this. And when I look at the, you know, what's one of the best ways to fight anti-Semitism? Well, fight hatred of all kinds, fight Islamophobia, fight
none of us are free until all of us are free.
And if we do exactly, but the thing is, the Jewish community puts resources there. The other thing I would say, the last comparison between Mazon and maybe Seva, is that, you know, being Canadians, these are examples of what I call of next generation Sikh institutions or Canadian institutions, which actually take the best of who we are. Of the Jewish people, of the Sikh people, and say, how do we take those values and those, but also the resources we have as a community, and now leverage them and translate them in a way that serves all of Canadians, right? And I think, and what it is not a blame on the first, and part of it is, I think, generational, right? I'm second generation. My first parents came. It was all about
like what I was saying. There's a contraction when you first end up somewhere new. You know, you turn to your own community, but then
very quickly, if things go well, you're able to take on this larger sense of responsibility and have a sense of agency. And this is why, the Sikh community is so involved in political affairs. I know the Jewish community is so involved, because we start having the sense of responsibility for our giving back and being able to put our resources to display to help everybody else. So there you go.
I feel like, okay, I know you said we may be interrupted by your kids coming home soon. Do you mind if I there's some stuff that we already covered a little. I'd love to just like keep going up until we have to go. Is that all right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You probably have a few more minutes here. Yep.
Yeah, because I'm having so much fun. So another thing is, we talked about this a bit, but Mazon really wants to be talking about children's hunger this season. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me, the communities that you're serving, and I know it's like communities plural, like I know you're, like I said, collaborating with some of these other like smaller institutions that are operating out of your space, etc., like that are serving particular like ethnic or cultural groups, and others that are just like open door kinds of programs. I know there's like many communities happening, but in any of those communities, how are you seeing children's hunger, especially being affected by the pandemic, the last 2 years, the new loosening of restrictions? What are you seeing?
So we operate geographically. So we have, I think, 7 postal codes in the Mississauga area, where we are the food bank of choice that people go to, right? So if you live in these certain parts of town and you need food, you go to Seva, or you go to some of our other peer agencies. So we see all of the families in Malton that need food that sign up, they come to us, and Cookville sign up. I would say, I don't remember the latest stats, but probably 50% are children. Simple as that. Families come in, 50% of our children. We've had a lot of the refugee families come through, and they're larger families, so only a couple of adults and lots more kids coming in. We see the stat I remember that shocked me was it's probably almost going on. When we started the Seva, this is one of the stats that I heard that just shocked. It was like 13% of all kids in Peel region were going to school hungry at least one day a month, and it wasn't because they were late, that they didn't have time for breakfast or whatever, is that they would open the fridge and there's nothing to eat. And I heard stories of kids would drink 2 big glasses of water, kind of push down the hunger, and get on the bus and go to school. And you're like, what are these kids going to learn? What are they going to be? What energy they're going to have? What are they going to do? And so we've invested heavily in that's why there's dozens of breakfast programs. All these schools have had them. Schools have them. Breakfast programs have moved to some of the lower income housing. Where into the lobbies of these houses, where in these buildings where people are distributed, and there's some great innovation happening in the models of getting food people in here, right?
Amazing,
right? There's like I've heard of things like and we've thought about this too, of like remember the bookmobile? I mean, if you're ever a kid, before libraries came around, you had that bus of books that actually went around to different neighborhoods where there weren't libraries. That's starting to happen now with food, where those things are being served now to everybody else, right? So lots are happening on that front there as well.
That's amazing. Oh, is this our cue?
I'm going to put these headphones in, if that's okay, and we can go for a couple more minutes.
Okay. I think some of this stuff we kind of covered. No, what? I'll ask you this last, and then we can go away. I know, like you said, the organization is operated from this place from the Sikh community, but I'm sure it's not like not even necessarily all of your volunteers themselves are Sikh. I know it is a multicultural institution, but I'm curious, like, how the last couple years, I know how the Jewish community, how our like religious practices have been interrupted. And I know that we're, both in the Greater Toronto area, with restrictions just starting to loosen, some of these religious practices that have been distant or altered are coming back. And I want to know, is there anything happening in the Sikh community that you're looking forward to now that these restrictions are ending? Is there anything coming back for you guys?
So let me just mention on the who we are and what we, in sense, absolutely. So 99% of our clients are non-Sikh. 70% of our volunteers are non-Sikh. I'd say 3/4 of our staff are non-Sikh. We're really proud that our last executive director was of a Muslim background. We've had an LGBT executive director. So we're really trying to practice that. We represent all, even though we come from the ethos of the Sikh community. We represent all Canadians there. Yes, so we've been, there's been so much atrophy in our community. Like I haven't been to Gurdwara in months. It just breaks my heart. And part of it because my parents live with me and with the elders, we didn't want to take the risk. We've been really lucky. Like our Sunday schools moved online and is thriving. So my kids are, instead of going to the Gurdwara and being bored, they get to be bored at home with the religious instruction. But we miss. but we missed the sense of community.
Yeah.
And the Lunger model pivoted, right? So Lunger was actually made to go. So all the food in the kitchens was actually served in takeout trays. And so families that were dependent on, or individuals that were dependent on the food, they turned into soup kitchens and they were serving people in need. But the sense of sitting down, breaking bread, sharing together, praying together, community, and it's called for us Sangat is our concept of community and congregation. And it's two words put together. It's really interesting. It's Sang is together, and gut is to do something, initiate, or direction and go. So it isn't just about merely people sitting together and just hanging out. It's a group of individuals who are coming together, which have a purpose of either spirituality or action or activism. And I think those of why, as much as we've been saved by the virtual world and Zoom and all the collaboration we've been able to do, I don't think we've actually met in person, right? Is it right? Like,
no,
it is no. It is nothing compared to what real life interaction is going to be. And I'm looking forward to the Sikh parades. The Nagar Kirtan is coming back. I'm looking forward to the Langars coming back. I'm looking forward to New Year's Eve at a Gurdwara, which is a huge tradition that we've adopted and stuff. So I just want to be in a room full of aunties and uncles and elders and little kids running around and moms going shh to their kids, saying quiet down, listen to the music, all that stuff that we love to miss.
For us, the next big holiday coming up is the holiday of Pesach or Passover. That is one of those times when, that's a holiday that people get on a plane and travel to go see family and go be back where you're from with the people with your people to do this like ceremonial meal together. And one of the beautiful traditions is like a classic piece of that text, the Haggadah that you read to guide you through that ceremonial meal says, let all who are hungry come and eat. And that's why Mazon's Passover campaign is so important to so many people. And I'm really excited that hopefully we'll be able to get some video from this conversation out before everyone is back with their families as part of this big campaign. So
I think what a great
forward to that. Big ceremonial meal. We love a ceremonial meal.
I hope that you have an amazing meal. I hope that you have time to reflect on scripture, on teachings, have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think taking care of yourself is the easy part, but taking care of others, taking care of people outside of your own community is I think putting those values into action is I think of the highest order. And I'm just so thankful for an organization like Mazon that it exists and epitomizes, I think, what the best of Judaism could be and the best of the Jewish community and the Canadian community could be.
And
so congratulations.
Similarly about the Sikh community, it's just so wonderful to work with partners that are operating on so many of these levels and have so much in common with us, like spiritually and ideologically, about how we operate, why we operate, and to be able to share so many of the things that we talked about today, like always trying to find ways to be innovative within the food security space, always trying to find ways to bring in advocacy to get people out of these situations, not just, stay dependent on food aid. Of course, we want to offer support as long as it's needed, but the idea is to really lift each other up. And I think this collaboration, there's just so much that we share, and it's been so wonderful to talk to you about it. I'm so glad that we could get you funding for those fridges and that those fridges are helping so many people access fresh, healthy food. It's just so wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kulvir. Have a really great day.
Take care.